Someone mentioned to me the other day that they hadn't seen a video done recently, and I realised it was a long time since I'd actually done a video on the garden. And this is probably the worst time that I could ever video the garden. After 2 big storms where the winds flattened the garden, I just haven't even made headway with a lot of it, because a lot of the plants that have been blown over, it's too early to cut them back, so I've literally left a lot of them just lying down and they're just continuing to grow, so at least I'll be able to harvest what's underneath them. So as well as sharing the good, I'm going to share some of the bad with my garden. Now this area here I've made into my kitchen garden this last season and a half. I'm still building the soil up because it was just mulch and not a lot under it, so it'll improve over the years. But this is predominantly where I'm planting my annuals that I can literally just come out from inside, pick what I need for tea and go back inside. And along in here is my ginger that's actually got a flower coming, which is quite lovely. So that's going to be really lovely to see if it's got a beautiful smell. So there's my ginger flower that's growing under there. So that's pretty lovely. So we'll just do a little bit of a pan around the kitchen garden, and then we'll move on into the food forest area where you'll see where there's a lot of damage from the wind. My busy little bees that are getting hammered by the wasps, but hopefully they're winning. I've reduced it down to just one entrance, so they are managing to keep the wasps off. I planted some moonlight potatoes, which are meant to be fast maturing potatoes, so hopefully we're going to be able to harvest them before the brunt of the cold comes in a couple of months' time. There's another little beehive over there that's chugging along. And along here was where I had my Jerusalem artichoke secret walkway, and in the first big storm I lost all the artichokes that were all down this side that was in amongst this comfrey line. So they've gone, and this side they mostly blew over and they've landed on the acorn, and because I really need to harvest what's underneath them, I've decided to leave them as it is. So they've fallen right over on one of the pathways, but I've just left them because I want the good tubers to be still growing as long as they can possibly grow underneath. I did cut the tops off the artichokes because when we had the next storms, if they'd stayed up like 10 feet tall, I would have lost a lot of them. So I'm sure there's been enough photosynthesis from what I left behind for them to have put some goodness back into the tubers. We got a new chook house a few weeks ago that my husband and my son-in-law built as a kit set, so that's been such a neat thing to have, with a separate egg box and a lot more room for the chookies to be sleeping in at night time. And they've got a lovely little area out here, so they're happy little girls, and they're giving me 3 eggs at least every day, so that's pretty cool. And I'll just pan back along here and we'll walk back nice and slowly so that it's not too fast to watch the screen. So over on this pergola we've got 4 grapes. I've planted some kiwi fruit on each side that can ramble up amongst the grapes, and then I've also let the star jasmine go on up this side, and it can all mix. So hopefully there'll be a bit of polyculture happening up on top of the pergola when they've all grown in together, which will be pretty neat. In the summertime this was my biggest Takasesti. It is cut back now, and I decided to leave it where it was, and this summer I was going to plant my runner beans up. It could be a natural frame, but when this last wind came, it actually completely flattened the Takasesti, so I've staked it back up, and I'm hoping it'll last and be able to be used as a natural climbing frame for my beans, which is pretty neat. And then I've got my Canna edulis, my edible canna lily, so you can eat the tubers like a potato substitute. So I've got a few of them dotted around, so that I've always got a good option of plants in the garden if I need to. And my mountain pawpaw's doing nicely, but we still haven't had a pawpaw fruit set. We get all little baby ones, but they're for some reason dropping off, so we'll see how they go in the next summer. When I planted my bananas, I've got 3 other ones apart from this one, I made a stupid mistake and planted them all along the fence lines, and I wished now that I'd planted them right dotted through the food forest, which would be a natural canopy. So now I'm going to be planting another 2 or 3 in amongst the food forest so that we'll get a nice little tropical canopy happening here. So I've planted this one probably a month ago, and it's doing quite well, so I'll get some others put in. And I've got several fig trees all dotted around, and they can, as well as being yummy eating, it's good fast growth to create biomass to be able to chop and drop around the garden. I do have a lot of turmeric, as you'll see as we're panning around, but I'm not going to be digging it this winter probably. I'll leave most of them just to get a bit more mature. And there's my elderberry, so hopefully we'll get some elderberries off it this coming summer. I'll just wander still slowly around. My stinging nettle, I've been making stinging nettle soup and stinging nettle salve, and it's really lovely. I love it. It's beautiful. I just love the taste of it when it's cooked up. Strawberries in here. My magenta spreen's just ending. In fact, most of it blew over, so I've been cutting it back. I've left some still up to give me seeds for next year because it really is my favourite veggie. I was picking it every single day and using the leaves for either raw or cooked up in quiches or as a stir fry, and it's just delicious. My stevia is all coming into flower, so I'll be able to cut that back in a wee while. More turmeric there, chard. I've got Egyptian walking onions dotted around. My kumaras that I chopped and dropped, they've all sprouted to grow, so I'm just going to leave them and see what happens, because maybe I'll be lucky and they will be all grown up a little bit ready for spring. This is my June berry and or my Canadian service berry. I'm hoping that this summer I might get some berries off that. My guava trees, the big yellow guava, and well, it's quite big, and it was just so delicious. I've had feasts off this. There's just a few left now, but they're tending to split because the rains come and the colder weather's here, so they probably won't ripen, but that's okay. And this was my cranberry tree that really is my favourite berry. I just absolutely love them. My canna lilies that are great chop and drop because they're great dynamic accumulators. And here I've got my first bananas forming. So that was my first banana flower. So that's just so exciting. And there were lots of camellia trees all around the section on the outside when we bought the house, and they're all the great open variety, so the stamens and all the goodness is easily accessible for the bees, so the bees just love them. So we've got several around the garden and they just hum with activity. Lots more turmeric around my fig tree here, and then I've got asparagus there, and I'm going to make that my asparagus patch. I'm going to transplant a whole lot that I've got beyond that plum tree. There is where I had it initially. This is my tree medic, which is a great nitrogen fixer and bioaccumulator, so that's growing really well. And down here I've got a lot of Chinese artichokes, which I'll be digging up for the first time this year, which will be neat to try. And we'll just step through here. Lots of potatoes I just dot around anywhere. I've got 2 more kiwi fruit here that I planted from seed that I bought from an organic kiwi fruit, and I'll let them grow up with this mandeville to join the grapes up on my pergola. My raspberries, these ones have just continually fruited and they're still going, so they've been just absolutely amazing. So next year we'll have so many more of those, and the boysenberry I've got in here that were just beautiful, so I'm going to get a proper frame put up soon and I'll be able to have them a lot better trained because they were quite straggly. So here's more of my Jerusalem artichokes. These were tied to the fence, so these have actually survived the wind reasonably well, which is a good thing. I'm making another big compost area here that can sit and do its stuff over winter, and then hopefully by spring I'll have a really nice heap to use. So I've just spread on a whole lot more horse poos today. And there's my loquat, really growing. That was a tiny little tree last year. It was about a foot tall when I put it in probably a year and a half ago, so it's done so well. And this is another of my this is the banana little clump that's actually done the best. And I'm pretty sure that I see a flower up there for me. It is. So that is going to be neat, and we can look out straight from our dining room window and lounge window to this, so that's going to be really, really cool. And then along here, it's just native trees I've planted, and it's just to break the fence up and to give us a bit of privacy and to be chop and drop when things grow too big. And along here, I'm building up the soil, and this is going to be another potato patch, I think. Next spring I'll plant potatoes in. So this was a whole lot of silage that I was given bagged up. It had been grass clippings, but it was a sealed sack for several weeks. And then more pony poos I'll spread on later on this afternoon. And so that's Green Hills Paradise, beginning of May 2022. So it's all coming on, but you're seeing it at its worst probably, and sometimes it's good to see things at the worst because you appreciate things when it's at its best. So that's me here in Coromandel.